Staff, thank you again for showing up and deal with us. And conferees, thank you all for being here also. So we've got a busy meeting to get to work. First item of business is bill introductions, and this is going to take quite some time. So Representative Bueller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have multiple bill introductions. First one is 25 RS 0549. It's on behalf of the Kansas Academy of Anesthesiologist Assistants, and this allows for anesthesiologist assistants to be licensed and practiced in Kansas. The second one I have to introduce is 25 RS 0467 on behalf of the Kansas Optometric Association, and this is an optometric scope of practice bill. The next one is, slow it down.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Multiple people taking notes.
Okay. Tell me when I'm ready to go again.
Okay.
Good to go? Okay, the next one is 25 RS 0752. This is introduced on behalf of the Alzheimer's Association, and it provides additional licensing requirements for assisted living facilities for dementia care or with dementia care. I have three more.
Continue.
The next one is 25 RS 0025. This is on behalf of the Kansas Chamber of Commerce, and this is a respiratory care interstate compact. Okay.
Continue.
Two more. 25 RS.
Hang on, Dave.
Back up.
No. Next.
25 RS 0431. Also on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce. This relates to advanced practice registered nurses, and it creates an advanced practice registered nurses compact for interstate practice privileges. Okay, last one, 25 RS 0824 on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce. This enacts the Physician's Assistant licensure compact for interstate practice privileges. Say it again.
Repeat.
Physician's Assistant licensure, that's hard to say, compact.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, that's it.
You're welcome. Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a bill to introduce. Representative Bueller and I are introducing this on behalf of the Casino Employees Against Smoking Effects, or CEASE Kansas. It's 25 RS 0482. 0482. It's on behalf of the Casino Employees Against Smoking Effects, or CEASE, C-E-A-S-E, Kansas. Thank you.
Good. Committee, further bill introductions. Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Steve Kearney. I'm here appearing on behalf of Compass, which is a biotech pharmaceutical company, and we're asking for introduction of 25 RS 0007, and it is changing the definition as approved, once approved by the FBA, of a specific compound of psilocybin and rescheduling it.
Spell psilocybin.
Seriously? Yeah. P-S-I-L-O-C-Y-B-I-N.
Very good. You passed.
Once in a while, right?
Anything else, staff? All right, very good. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Chairman.
Representative Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two bills. First is RS 0639. It expands the scope of the Inspector General to audit and investigate the state cash for food and health assistance programs. The second will be RS 0471 on behalf of Kansans for Life, requiring the Kansas Department of Health and Environment to create an informational video for caregivers on the status of abortion law in the state of Kansas.
We good? Representative Essex.
Hello. I have RS 0466, and it is an act that is designating the first week of February as Kansas Burn Awareness Week. So we would join other states in education and raising awareness and basically just honoring those that have died from burns. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee, further bill introductions. I'm going to do a blanket acceptance of these when we get through, so in the interest of time. Okay, I have a few myself. I would like to introduce as a committee bill a healthcare access improvement program bill. It's RS 0673, dealing with the HCAP, the Hospital Access Improvement Program. The next one is the Kansas Healthcare Scholarship Act, RS 0742. Another one is requiring the Secretary of the Aging and Disability Services to grant physical environment waivers for certain rural emergency hospitals to provide skilled nursing facility care, and it's RS 0834. Okay, and my final one, maybe the final one period, is RS 0878. This is concerning the procurement process for our managed care organizations. Any further bill introductions? Seeing none, committee, are there any objections to any of those bills? Seeing none, bills are entered. Okay. You have my sheet. Okay, we're going to open up the meeting to work 2071, House Bill 2071. Are there any amendments? Representative Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have an amendment that we can pass out. It's described as basically a housekeeping amendment, and I could refer to the reviser if she would like to explain it.
Is there a second? Representative Droege. Let's wait till we get passed out.
All right, it looks like everyone has it.
Mr. Chair, I'll do a brief explainer. I'll do the easy change first. It's on the very last page. Changes the effective date from statute book to Kansas Register. The other change is on page 4, and this relates to the civil causes of actions brought against a healthcare provider. The first one relating to the strict liability cause of action, the damages that a plaintiff was allowed to recover were not listed, and so this outlines what those are to make them the same as the causes of action in section C and D, which would be actual punitive damages, injunctive relief, the cost of the suit, and reasonable attorney fees. In subsection C, as originally written, the bill would allow a prevailing party to recover the cost of the suit and reasonable attorney fees. So if a healthcare provider were sued and they won, that healthcare provider would be allowed to recover their attorney fees. This amendment would change that to where the parents of a child would have this action and they could recover. So only the prevailing plaintiff could recover actual and punitive damages, injunctive relief, cost of the suit, and reasonable attorney fees. So the damages will be the same for each cause of action in subsections B, C, and D of section 4.
Is there discussion, committee? The chair believes this is a friendly amendment. Seeing Representative Ruiz.
I know the Senate worked this bill yesterday. Is this the same amendment the Senate passed?
The Senate worked it this morning, and it is
This
the
morning?
same.
It is, okay, same. All right, great, thank you.
Further discussion, committee. Representative McDonald.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification. It reads that the parent would get the money. What if the child is over 18 when they filed the suit? Does this allow for the child to get that money when they're an adult?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the way that these are written is that in subsection B, that would be the cause of action for the child, and subsection C would be the cause of action for the parents. And so the damages that could be claimed by a parent would be unique for those of the child. So if a child had turned 18, then that would be under subsection B. C is just for the parents.
Thank you.
Committee, further discussion. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. No. Motion carries. Would anybody like their vote recorded on this?
Yes, thank you for tuning.
Please raise your hand. Wilkes, Meyer, Ruiz, McDonald, or Peso? Anybody else? Your votes are recorded. Further discussion on the bill? Are there further amendments? Representative Ruiz. Is there a second? Second by McDonald. Representative McDonald. Committee, the chair is committed to making this a clean bill except for the First Amendment that we put on, which I felt like was a friendly amendment. Representative, would you care to explain your amendment?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yesterday, in listening to all of the conferees that were here yesterday, the proponents of the bill, it felt to me that it was very clear that the thing that they most felt was wrong, I guess, to use that word, was the fact that they believe children are receiving the surgery. They're not, but that's what they believe in. And they focused a lot on the fact that there are surgeries being performed on children under the age of 18. My amendment is to change the bill so that it is only that. It is only covers surgery for children age 18 and under.
Further discussion, committee. Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did a lot of campaigning this year in order to get to come back here, and one thing that I really stressed at the door and that I think my constituents appreciated was my commitment to meeting people in the middle, to listening, and to maybe not getting everything that I particularly want on any given occasion. And I would challenge my colleagues here to be a little brave and to think about those of us who are sticking our neck out to try to meet you in the middle. If you have other ideas, that'd be great, but I'd really like for us to have a good conversation on this amendment in particular. Thank you.
Committee, further discussion. Seeing none, Representative Wilkes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to speak in support of this amendment. It was evident to me from the testimony yesterday that the greatest concern is with irreversible surgical procedures and not with other forms of social transitioning, which I think the pediatric endocrinologist explained very well. And in the research I've done from the American Academy of Pediatrics and other medical associations, this seems very in line with their recommendations.
Committee, further discussion. Representative Steen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm understanding that this amendment, what you're saying is you just want to eliminate the surgical procedure part, but include the puberty blockers and things like that.
It would be the opposite.
Okay, but
the
not
bill-
eliminating that.
Eliminating
I'm
the
saying-
puberty, the medication parts of it?
Correct.
Yes, it would eliminate that and
Okay.
only stick to the surgery.
Okay, so the only concerns, I'm just going to voice a couple things, is one thing that I was unclear about, and maybe someone else can help me answer this, is when the doctor who spoke here, the endocrinologist, I didn't see any numbers of things. So in Kansas, you know, what's going on. And so that was a little concerning for me because I'm like, how many of these kids are taking these, you know, what reports do we have and what are our percentages? And so I kind of feel like how many kids are taking these puberty blockers and how many kids are getting these surgeries? I mean, I still haven't seen any numbers on that. So those are some of my concerns. Thank you.
Representative Weichel, I apologize. Now, one more time, tell me how to pronounce your name, and I hope I will remember it.
No worries. It's the story of my life, Mr. Chairman. It's Weichel. The best way to remember is that it rhymes with Michael.
Okay. I will do my best to remember Weichel. Okay. Thank you very much. Committee, further discussion. Representative Howe.
Thank you, Chair. And just to follow up with Representative Steins, which I hope I remember how to pronounce your last name. Steens, thank you. See, I'm still struggling. Okay. While this is going around, you know, yesterday as I asked the question of the doctor yesterday, no one is required to report. So we have absolutely no idea how many kids are taking the puberty blockers. And that's actually more concerning to me than the surgeries, actually. I think many of us are aware of the severe possible consequences of taking hormonal blocking drugs. And, you know, and I'm sure I am not the only woman sitting here who have very dear and close friends who have permanent consequences from taking drugs and medications like that while they're fighting cancer and have, you know, will have consequences of that forever and ever. And I just can't imagine giving that to children. And when I look at the many, the numerous other countries that are changing their policies and no longer allowing children to do that, I just don't see how it is safe for our children in our country to do so, and in our state. So, and I have yet to see anybody provide justification for that. I can't scientifically justify that. So if I could, Chair, could we ask the reviser to explain this amendment to us and what it does and how it changes this law?
You may. Jenna?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative. So what this amendment would do is it takes out everything in the bill that is not the surgery ban, as well as the Section 7, which is the professional discipline statute for Board of Healing Arts licensees, meaning physicians. So it keeps the definitions in place, except for the definition of social transitioning, as that part is stricken. And in Section 2, the provisions related to the state being, or the state or a state property or MCOs/Medicaid cannot be used to pay for surgery. The provisions related to dispensing medication are stricken. And then Section 3 still prohibits a healthcare provider from performing the surgical procedures to children experiencing gender dysphoria. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Does that answer your question, Representative Howell?
So I'm still not sure I understand. So is it prohibiting children being given the puberty blocking drugs or no?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, the medication ban is stricken in this, so it would only prohibit the surgeries.
Representative Weichel.
Thank you, and I appreciate the discussion. And to the previous representative's point that her concern that this medication is not safe, I would like to reiterate the point that was made yesterday that we are not actually banning these medications. We're banning these medications for a certain part of the population, and that they will still be able to be prescribed to many other children. Thank you.
Representative Buehler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I've thought about this and with respect to this amendment, both of the proponents and the opponents, if you take this up to a higher level, state that their belief or their position on this bill is to is to protect children. I think I heard that from both sides yesterday, and I think I'm hearing it today. And so it's not just the gender reassignment surgeries. It's the combination of things. And I think and for me, I start with the fact that these are kids under 18. There are so many things you can't contractually engage with a minor at 18 or below. They can't vote, they can't drink, there's so many things they can't do because their bodies are changing. When I look at these medications, I am married to a retired pharmacist, but I know that some of these drugs do cause long-term effects if prescribed at children going through puberty that will be lifelong and life-lasting. So to me, it's bigger than just the gender reassignment surgery. I start with the protection of children, and when a person reaches the age of majority or their bodies physically mature and mentally mature, then they're able to make those decisions themselves. That's a different ballgame. But if we go back to the beginning and we talk about this as protecting children, and that is, we have a societal role to do that. As parents, grandparents, and our legal systems, that's where I start. So that's why I think this is more than a gender reassignment surgery. And I think everything is included in this. I mean, so when we look at this issue, it's just not the surgery, it's the puberty blockers, it's the hormone therapies on kids, minors, whose bodies haven't fully matured. So I would be in opposition to the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Committee further discussion. Representative Reeves.
If you heard a little bit more of what the endocrinologist was saying, she spoke about how the medication is prescribed very in small doses, and it is increased over long periods of time. So it's not just, you don't get a full dose right off the bat. So it is done very carefully. And someone made the point that other children will be receiving this medication. So if we truly believe that this medication isn't good for any child, then why isn't this bill cover all children and not those who believe that they are trans? That makes no sense. That's very hypocritical in my mind. But it still felt to me very strongly that the issue at hand was about the surgeries.
Representative Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's important that we remember the ban is not for a particular group of people. The ban is on a particular diagnosis, and it's very, very common to have medications that are restricted for certain diagnoses. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further, Representative McDonald.
I think we're losing sight of the fact that we're not asking children to make these decisions. We're empowering parents in conjunction with their healthcare provider to make these decisions together. I would remind you that children can't go buy a gun, but they can have their parents take them hunting. There are a lot of times when children look to us for guidance. There are times when we look to professionals for guidance, and I would argue that very few people serving right now in the Kansas Legislature are professionally qualified to make decisions like this. And as a pretty strong-willed parent, I would really be frustrated if a legislative body came and tried to tell me what to do with my own children. Thank you.
Committee, further discussion? Seeing none, you may move your...
One more.
Okay.
One more point. I believe we asked the reviser, I think it was Carly that was up front that was explaining the bill, and we asked that very same question about, was this bill targeting a certain population? And the answer was yes. So if you're looking at, it's less than 1% of the entire population or people, whether they're a child or an adult, who are trans. So we're looking at a really tiny, small amount. And so then now you want to, you're saying that you're going to narrow it down to a disorder. You're still talking about a very small group of people. They are still being singled out. And, if you want to, color it some other, try to figure out how else to accept that. And it's plain and simple. This is targeting an extremely small number of people, but not just people, but people that are 18 years and under.
Committee, further discussion? Seeing none, you may move your motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we vote in the affirmative for this amendment.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. No. Motion is defeated.
I'd like to have my vote counted, please.
Everybody that wants
Recorded.
their vote recorded, raise their hand. Got it? Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Representative Berquist.
for clarity as to how that vote was cast, I mean, is it automatically known who voted what? You said their votes, and was it the same people?
If you want your vote in the negative recorded, we
Okay.
can do that too. I think it goes without saying, but I'm certainly willing to count negative votes.
I was just clarifying. Do you want your votes counted? And it was like
Yeah.
automatically, okay.
All right, very good. Further discussion, committee. Representative Ruiz.
Mr. Chair, I have another amendment.
Is there a second? Representative McDonald. Would the maker of the amendment care to explain their amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. If you would look on page 4 at line 1 through 7, and it strikes that, what this amendment essentially does is grandfather in any child that is currently receiving any form of treatment. Medications seems to be an issue, the puberty blockers that everybody's been talking about. So this would, if those children are receiving this type of treatment already for gender dysphoria, they would continue with that indefinitely. Any child that is going to start this treatment would be, what's the after date? I think the date is 2025, 12/31/2025, right? All children that are on the medication now, they would be grandfathered in indefinitely, but those children who are going to start it, they have until, are we using the December 31st, 2025?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative, so an individual to take advantage of the legacy clause would have to begin the medication prior to the effective date of the bill, which as amended would be the Kansas Register, so a couple weeks after the passage.
So it does essentially, it grandfathers in all the children who are already receiving this treatment for gender dysphoria, and it's indefinitely for them.
Committee discussion on the amendment. Representative Blex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kind of clarify that to me, and we didn't cover the line 43 on page 3 that's lined out red in mine. And it looks like to me that we're actually taking those children that are currently involved in that treatment, we're taking away the ability for a healthcare provider to provide a systematic reduction, which it just would be going cold turkey right off. So we're eliminating that healthcare provider's ability to take that person off of that drug on a healthy, safe, medically safe way that's already on it. Am I reading that correctly if we strike all those lines?
Jenna?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the way that the bill would read with this amendment would be, if the healthcare provider has already started a child on this medication, the healthcare provider may continue such course of treatment, period. The other provisions were in there, and they gave conditions upon which a healthcare provider would be allowed to taper down the amount. And so under this provision, they still could taper down the amount of the hormone therapy, but they would not be required to in order for a healthcare provider to continue giving a child the medication.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, you may close on your amendment. All in favor of the amendment before us, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign? No. Motion fails.
Would like my vote count?
Raise your hands if you would like your affirmative vote counted. Very good. We have you. Okay. Representative Ruiz.
I have another amendment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Do I have a second? Representative Weichel. Would you care to explain your amendment?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question of the reviser. Either one. What is the age of consent for a child to get married?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the current age in KSA 23, and I just looked this up, 2505 is 18 years of age, but with the parental consent, it could be 16.
Thank you. This bill, this amendment would change the age from 18 to 16. So if you look at page 1, line 19, child means an individual less than 16 years of age instead of 18 years of age. If a child has wherewithal, I guess, even if it's through court, of course, with parental consent, to get married, I believe they can also make these type of decisions along with parental consent.
Discussion on the amendment, committee. Seeing none, you may close on your amendment.
I close.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. No. Motion fails.
Vote recorded.
McDonald, Orpeza, Ruiz, Meyer, and Weichel. Representative Ruiz. Representative Weichel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment.
Do I have a second? Second by Orpeza.
Mr. Chairman, forgive my freshman question, but should I explain while the revisor hands out or wait for the revisor?
I'd like for everybody to see the changes before we start discussion. Now you may explain your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a relatively straightforward amendment. This strikes new section 6, which is a severability clause. The reasoning being that if we believe this bill to be constitutional, it should stand on its own without a severability clause.
Thank you. Committee, further discussion. Seeing none, you may close on your amendment.
I close on my amendment and request the votes of yes. I don't know exactly what to say.
All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. No. Motion fails.
Vote recorded.
McDonald, Orpeza, Ruiz, Meyer, and Weichel. Further discussion on the bill. Representative Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also have an amendment.
I have a second. Second by Ruiz. Representative, would you care to explain your amendment?
I would. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment proposes to remove anyone who is regulated by the, does not include individuals who are licensed by the Behavioral Sciences Regulatory Board. So this would include mental health professionals and folks of that nature. The amendment also goes on to explain that it would also not prohibit the prescribing, dispensing, or administration of medications used to treat mental illness by these mental health providers, so that we would not be able to continue to treat these children's coexisting conditions.
Thank you. Discussion on the amendment, committee. Representative McDonald.
I'd just like to speak in support of this because I think it addresses one of my biggest concerns. These children are very often in crisis and their families also. And I think when I hear people I don't always agree with about the solutions, we all do agree that sometimes kids need therapy. And so this would provide some coverage for counselors, therapists, that sort of thing, to protect them from liability, loss of license, et cetera.
Thank you. Further discussion. Representative Reeves.
I also support this bill. Over the summer, I was invited to several Zoom meetings that were conducted by school social workers and social workers in general, who were very concerned. They figured this bill would resurface, and were very concerned about how they're going to practice and whether, it's unfortunate, I hate to hear it when I hear it, whether they want to even stay in the state that has a bill such as this. You know, we already lack healthcare professionals. We lack physicians, we lack pediatricians, we lack all forms of healthcare professionals, mental health care professionals. Bills like this, all it does is try to turn people away because they are afraid about losing their license. And so they're feeling like, well, if a child who just happens to be trans comes into their office or sees them down the hall, are they supposed to just turn around and just ignore them? Because because they're concerned about losing their license and being held for liability. In this bill, it is not clear that therapy can continue. It is not clear. I don't care what anybody says. It is not clear because those people who practice this profession, it isn't clear to them. So how is it going to be clear to anybody else?
Thank you. Committee, further discussion. Representative Steens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just so I understand, you're saying for trans children because, and maybe this is a revisor question, in our laws, if they're practicing, like if you have a medical professional, a social worker or a psychologist or a psychiatrist who are seeing kids, can they not already prescribe medications or things that are needed for the children? I'm saying an all-encompassing if a medical professional decides that in a practice.
Hang on, Jenna.
I'm sorry, I only caught the last half of your question.
That's
Something
okay.
about
So-
who can prescribe what?
So if we have medical professionals in our state, right, social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, if they're seeing children, right, under the age of 18, regardless of whatever their diagnosis is, are they not already protected to prescribe medications? Like whatever the antidepressants or whatever they need?
I think I understand your question. Okay. So in this bill, there is not a specific prohibition on prescribing mental health related medication, whomever is authorized to prescribe it.
Thank you for that clarification.
Committee, further discussion. Representative Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To your concern, I think where my concern was is that it wasn't clear enough. It dictates who, can and can't do things, but it didn't protect specifically the ability for those providers who can make those prescriptions available to their patients already. So that was a clarifying point. The part of it that I feel like I really wanted to focus on the most with this particular amendment is to the previous representative, our rankings statements. For those of us in the mental health field who are already practicing, it is a risk to our licensure because of the way that the bill language is stated, that if we are to see clients who are transgender and who are minors, so for instance, I see individuals who are 16 and up, and we are to, under the language of the bill, also acknowledge their gender identity through our, conversations with them in a therapeutic aspect. This could put us at risk, and it could cause us to be liable under this bill. So this is just to remove mental health professionals, because from what I understood from the conversation, from those of us here, from the conversation around the bill in the past, and then the testimony from both the proponents and the opponents, is that the mental health aspect of the children that we are talking about in this situation is of the most utmost importance. And I would say by the title of the bill is really directing us to do things without harming children. So, this would just make sure that those of us who practice any sort of mental health profession with children who may or may not be transgender are still able to practice with them without fearing any prosecution or liability.
Thank you for that. Representative Reeves. Oh,
Sorry.
Representative Steens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Representative, thank you for that. But so my question is that not already protected between the client and the doctor or the medical professional that's already seeing them because of HIPAA and those kinds of things? I would think privacy, right, between whoever your medical professional is, whatever form that may be, and the client is already protected. Am I not correct? I just want to make sure so I understand that for clarification.
Yes, I understand. So there are some aspects of that that are concerning, like with intake paperwork, for instance. So in a lot of intake paperwork that we have, it's standard. And so for the folks that I see that are 16 and up, I do ask for pronouns on that paperwork. This would affect that. So if I were to actively ask for a person's pronouns on that paperwork, that would be accessible. Not necessarily, it could be redacted, but it would still be, you could see the age of the patient, you could see, that I did ask for pronouns and things of that nature. I think that, kind of goes across the board. There are certain things that are protected under HIPAA, but this just goes further to ensure that mental health professionals who are not even, like I can't prescribe medications, correct, as a social worker, but I can see people and help them work through their issues with gender dysphoria. And so this would protect individuals in the field from being prosecuted or being held liable under this bill language, which is very broad and vague, from facing those penalties, if that makes sense. No problem.
Representative Reeves.
Thank you, Representative Steens. It's a really good question. And also as a licensed social worker. The way healthcare provider is defined in here, it's more of an umbrella term. And so anyone that provides health services is included, which also includes mental health services. And this is where it starts getting really nervous for those of us in the mental health arena who cannot prescribe medication. So that there isn't a distinction made between the two. The only ones that can prescribe medications are those professionals that can. They're physicians, they're nurse practitioners, PAs, all those who are authorized via their license, not at the BSRB, because they're not in the behavioral services regulatory board. Because even a psychiatrist is under the medical board. They are authorized to prescribe medication, but yet we are all thrown under this number 5, under this healthcare provider. And what this amendment does is it takes everybody out that is under the BSRB. There's a lot. It's all the psychologists, social workers, counselors, school social workers, everybody. Takes us out of this definition and makes it clear to us that we are not part of that area where they can bring upon a lawsuit. Because we all know that lawyers are probably going to go after as many people as they can, but at least this brings some form of protection in the law, and therefore it just frees up and lessens the anxiety that so many of these folks under the BSRB are feeling right now, feeling like, how am I supposed to practice?
Thank you for that. Committee, further discussion. Representative Myers, you may move your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I close my amendment.
All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Motion fails. You guys know the drill. Got it? All right, very good. Thank you. Committee, further discussion. Representative Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have another amendment.
Second?
Second.
Second by Ruiz. Would you care to explain your amendment?
I would, Mr. Chair, thank you. This amendment would effectively eliminate the sections which do not, which ban social transitioning. So we are looking to make sure that minors are still allowed to socially transition, similar to the First Amendment that was brought to us here in the committee. We understand that most of the proponents of this bill are typically focused on medication and surgical interventions. This one actually leaves the medication and the surgical interventions as it stands, but takes out social transitioning so that these minor transgender children are allowed to socially transition.
Very good. Thank you for that. Committee discussion. Representative Paiso.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would be in support of this amendment, especially because it would support our state workers, teachers, anybody with a healthcare professional background, as well as those children who are just wanting either to paint their nails or color their hair or change their name, which doesn't really affect any one of us in any certain way. It does not require any type of medication. It does not require any type of surgery, but just lets them be who they are in the most way that is meaningful to them. And at least they can express themselves as most people do in our society. Some of us wear pants and some of us wear dresses and some of us color our hairs. So it would just allow these individuals to express themselves while they're out in society.
Thank you for that. Committee, further discussion. Representative Bueller.
I have a question, this may be for the reviser. This doesn't prohibit parents from allowing their kids to socially transition, does it?
Mr. Chair, Representative, based upon my reading, no, it does not prohibit parents.
Okay.
It prohibits recipients of state funds shall not use in Section 2, or state employees or state properties, but parents, no.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Chair. I think part of my perspective and representative people in my district who've talked to me about this, this is a deeply held issue within families, and I fully support parents. If this is their choice with their child, that's their choice with their child. But when it gets down to the possible intervention of a teacher or a school district, or to the point of schools doing something that's without a parent's knowledge, I think that's where this gets into the slippery slope. So again, I have no opposition to a parent who chooses to do this. I go back to campaign things that I've heard from people within my district about this very sensitive issue and school district employees inserting themselves in what I believe is a family matter. So I would be in opposition to this. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Representative Weichel.
I'm speaking in support of this amendment, and to the point of the previous representative about parental rights and family choice, I think, you know, as a parent, my child doesn't live exclusively within my home. So if I make a decision that I want my child to be who they are, and, you know, that's a choice that we make as a family, that my husband and I make together with our children, I would want to be able to find a mental health care provider that could help that child. I would want that child to go to a school where it's not that teachers are intervening and telling the kids what to do. They're accepting the kids as they are and as the family is asking them to accept them. So I think it's a little more complex, right? Because kids don't just stay home within their parents. They're out in our institutions, in our communities. I speak in support.
Thank you for that. Committee, further discussion. Representative McDonald.
I have a question for the revisor. My reading of this always has been last year and this year, that this will put teachers and educators, any kind of school counselor, any state employee, if we go broader, in jeopardy if they use something as simple as pronouns. Or, you know, I can ask that my kid, Robert, be called Bob, but would the teacher get in trouble if my kid Robert wants to be called Suzanne or Leah? Where is the line? I think this is evidence of why we shouldn't write such vague bills.
Could you please repeat your question just to make sure I get the right answer?
I'll try.
Thank you.
I think there's a belief amongst teachers, educators, people who are in the public school setting, or even more broadly, you know, we are in a state facility right now. If a child came and a state employee like me used a pronoun that's preferred for a transgender minor, am I going to get in trouble for that? Or is a teacher going to lose their license for that? Or a school nurse or a counselor? Am I going to be, are any of us going to be liable civilly? Because I think that is the disconnect in this room. I think those of us who are really, really concerned about this legislation don't see it as ambiguous as the rest of us do. And I've never gotten a real clear answer. I feel like we had an opportunity to repair this bill over the summer and last fall, and it looks to be mostly the same bill as we had last year.
Just based on the language of the bill as it is written, it does say a state employees. It mentions state employees and then describes social transitioning, which would be what you were describing.
So what I'm hearing you say is, yes, teachers or any other public employee, including school nurse, counselor, teacher, administrator, social worker, speech language pathologist, hearing audiologist, any of those would be opening themselves up to civil liability and loss of licensure. And maybe I don't even know about the insurance question. To me, this is evidence that we should not progress this bill further until we work out these problems.
I just want to jump in and say this bill does not define state employee. So to that point, I am unable to say it definitively what would fall under the state employee. But a state employee would be prohibited from the social transitioning portion as the bill is written.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm going to have to vote in favor of this and maybe propose an amendment or two down the road. Thank you.
Committee, further discussion. Seeing none, Representative Myers, you may move your motion.
Thank you. If I may, before I move this, to Representative McDonald's point, I think that that was the concern I certainly raised on the floor last year, and the reason why I brought this amendment. It is so ambiguous with what a state employee is. That could include a foster care worker, a DCF worker, a social worker, those that you mentioned, and in any public building for that matter as well. So with that, I do move my amendment, and I hope that you all will vote in the affirmative with me. Thank you. I close.
Very good. Thank you for that. Committee, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. No. Motion fails. Weichel, Myers, Ruiz, Orpeza, and McDonald. Committee further discussion. Representative Orpeza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a point of clarification from yesterday on the statute of limitations for pediatrics providers. Because in the bill it says 10 years, and I want to know what the standard is for the state of Kansas.
I believe that email was sent out to the committee, but I will pull it up right now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I just don't remember getting it. Thank you.
While she's doing that, further discussion, Representative McDonald.
I have that email if you'd like for me to read it to you. It says, a question about the statutes of limitations for other civil actions came up during committee. A statute of limitations, generally speaking, is a time limit by which an action must be filed by. And among other things, it mentions here the statute of limitations for civil actions against medical providers for things like medical malpractice and wrongful death is 2 years. And with that, I have an amendment.
Is there a second? Representative Orpeza.
Thank you. This one's the statute of limitations one. That won't be next. I'm sorry. I had to get out of order for a second. This one is requiring the statute of limitations. Okay, sorry.
So let's get it passed out first, and then
Okay.
you can explain your amendment, please.
Sorry for the confusion. Thank you. Sorry. No, it's this one.
Okay, please explain your amendment.
Thank you. I'd like to bring this in alignment as far as the penalty, the statute of limitations for the civil action to be in alignment with other types of medical malpractice. So it would bring it to 2 years instead of the 10-year time period from which a suit can be filed past the child's 18th birthday. I've heard from a lot of medical providers who really express.
Yeah, hold on just a second here. So we got two here.
On the back page, it's stricken out, stuff is stricken out, and the word "to" is written twice on line 19 and 32.
Okay, not this one.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Just
Hold
want to
it,
make
though.
it clear. So was anybody else passed out this other one?
On page 4, line 19.
Okay, hang on just a second here. Okay,
Yes,
so the other one,
my
all right.
apologies.
Are we clear now? Okay, now you may explain your amendment.
This is really the first time I've done an amendment, so thanks for your grace. To Representative Oropeza's point, I felt like 10 years was an exorbitantly long amount of time, and this would bring it into alignment with other statute, other medical malpractice statutes to be 2 years from the date the individual turns 18 instead of 10.
Thank you for that. Committee discussion on the amendment. Representative Steens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I would be opposed to this because, to me, okay, so you add 2 years, that's 20 years old, right? And so for me, I mean, we heard from some of the proponents that they had some long-lasting effects. And, when you're 20, I feel like you're still really young, and there's just a lot of things going on. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I was probably 25 plus before I kind of made some better decisions. So, and we heard from one of the proponents that she is now not able to have children. So 2 years really is not that long for these surgeries. And we're still learning a lot of things from these people in the after effects of a lot of things that they're suffering. I think osteoporosis and some of those things were also brought up. So 2 years does not seem like an applicable time to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the amendment. Representative Reeves.
I want to ask the committee to remember that there were also several people who are young, who are lawyers now, have been raised in Kansas. They've been here their entire life. They've gone through school. They have transitioned. A couple of them have fully transitioned. And they're leading very happy lives. Not once did they talk about botched surgeries, that any one of us can have a botched surgery. And the folks that came in to talk to us about that are paid to go all across the country and tell these horrific stories and to make everybody believe that everything is like that. Well, it's not. They are the exception. Anybody can have a botched surgery. And so please don't forget the young people that came to talk to us about how their lives have changed because of this. And at this point, they're being ignored. So I'm asking to not just focus on the horrific stories that we heard. They're paid professionals at this point to go around telling these stories.
Thank you. Representative Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think just to the representative's point, she's mentioned about child abuse and rape and so forth, and you might note that there's been a push to extend the statute of limitation for those type of victims. And for those who are on the side that sees these kind of mutilations and chemical castrations as child abuse, it would tend to fit into the category of wanting to extend even further out the statute of limitations. And that would just be a comment. Thank you.
Representative Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To all three of the previous representatives, so to address this as castration and mutilization, I think is, we really have to be careful with that language. We initially offered an amendment which would strictly limit this to surgery, and then we keep offering amendment after amendment to try to meet in the middle somewhere, including with social transitioning. So it's very clear that that's not what we're talking about anymore here. To Representative Ruiz's point, I've spoken with endocrinologists and medical providers on this, and mental health professionals as well. And the thing is with the testimony that we heard yesterday, it is incredibly tragic what occurred with her. But to that point, and to Representative Ruiz's point as well, she has been sent all over the country to make this tragic story known. That said, we know that so many things were missed with her care specifically. But in the state of Kansas, that's not happening. And we heard from an endocrinologist who treats over 400 transgender children, who stated on the record that all of those issues that were raised by the conferee are regularly addressed, and if found, the child is referred out before ever being seen for any medical interventions or social interventions. In fact, they are referred to mental health professionals first. Furthermore, I think that it's important that we recognize that many things happen to us at different ages. I had a child at the age of 21, my sister at 18. I had friends who had children younger than that. Those are huge things that happen to your body that have risks as well. And medical complications can happen then too, you know, as often do. And I think we debate in other areas of the law. So I won't get into that aspect, but I think that this is a very appropriate amendment to make, to keep it in line with the rest of the things that we have as far as statutes of limitations. And I would certainly support this as a very reasonable measure. Thank you.
Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding rhetoric in a meeting like this about child sexual rape and violent crimes, those are criminal actions. What we're talking about is a civil action, according to this bill. If we're going to penalize medical malpractice at a higher level, then I could see the argument about leaving it at 10 years. But at this point, state statute says medical malpractice, wrongful death statute of limitations is 2 years. And all I'm asking is for you to meet in the middle here on this one tiny amendment so that we could find some common ground. And if there aren't any other conversations, I'd move my amendment.
I would remind the committee to not impugn the conferees in any way, shape, or form in the future. So with that, you move your amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. No. Motion fails. McDonald, Orpeza, Ruiz, Meyer, Weigel. Votes are recorded. Further amendments? Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have an amendment regarding the liability portion.
Do I have a second? Second by Ruiz. Early. Would you care to explain your amendment?
For a change of pace, could I ask the reviser to?
Mr. Chair, Representative, on page 4, this amendment would remove new section 4 and new section 5, which are the liability provisions of this bill.
Committee discussion on the amendment. Representative McDonald.
My main reason for this amendment is my huge concern about our already dire situation with a lack of medical providers. The perception among the medical community is that we are wielding the law as a weapon, threatening their livelihood with a very vague bill. I think that, personally, I think that we're probably doing the same thing for our educators and public school employees down to the bus drivers. I would like to remove the section that is punitive in nature from a financial standpoint, and also to remove the portion that prevents them from getting professional liability insurance, because I think this is really a harsh portion of the bill. It sets a dangerous precedent.
Very good. Thank you for that. Committee discussion. Seeing none, you may close on your amendment.
I close.
You've heard the amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? No. Motion fails. McDonald, Orpezzo, Ruiz, Meyer, and Weichel. Further amendments? Representative McDonald.
Thank you very much. I'd like to make an amendment to remove the civil, I'm sorry, hold on. Getting out of order. To remove the civil action portion, it's a smaller amount of what we just attempted. It's on page 415 through 33, striked out.
Thank you. We're passing it out now. Do I have a second? Orpezzo, seconded by Representative Orpezzo. Would you care to explain your amendment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This leaves in the portion that would put the person or the medical professional's license in jeopardy, so that they still could lose their medical license or professional license. It also leaves in the portion regarding professional liability insurance, but because I feel so strongly that we should not open them up to civil action, I've stricken that portion in this amendment.
Thank you for that. Committee discussion? Representative Ruiz.
I'm in support of this amendment also, because, you know, again, we are in dire straits regarding healthcare providers. We don't want to, we want to be a welcoming state, and right now, this bill does not make us a welcoming state to healthcare providers, physicians, pediatricians. So I'm in support of this bill. Thank you.
Committee, further discussion? Seeing none, you may close on your amendment.
I appreciate your patience with me. I realize that the day is getting long, but this is really, really impactful stuff. My kids are watching me now. My pediatrician is watching me now, and I feel it's my obligation to speak up and on their behalf and implore you to really think hard about what we're about to do. I did not come here to weaponize the law against people who are working within the scope of practice. So I close on my amendment.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? No. Motion fails. McDonald, Orpezzo, Ruiz, Meyer, and Weichel. Further discussion on the bill. Representative McDonald.
I have an amendment that regards removing school buildings from this legislation.
I have a second. Second by Orpezzo.
Thank you.
Representative Orpezzo, I'm sorry if I've started abbreviating things, committee. Would you care to explain your amendment?
Yes, sir. I appreciate that our revisers gave us clarification about state property being a bit vague and undefined. I don't know that this necessarily defines it, but it would give us the ability to exclude school buildings, and school buildings actually is defined in statute. I think that this would alleviate a lot of anxiety for the teachers who took the time out of their school day to come and testify yesterday. And it's not just teachers. We have a lot of people who work in our school buildings, and I think, again, we have a shortage of teachers. We have a shortage of paras. We have a shortage of bus drivers. I think this is an opportunity for us to, in good faith, let them know that they are not being targeted by this legislation. Thank you.
Committee discussion on the amendment.
Sorry.
Representative Steins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when I'm reading this, all it's saying is that, and as you were talking about teachers, and believe me, I have 5 children myself, so I'm, when I'm looking at this, it's saying that they're not supposed to dispense or administer medication or perform surgery as provided. So can you, the revisers, maybe you can correct me, because I don't think that eliminates the teachers from talking to the children. Is that correct?
In this, oh, apologies. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In this amendment, we would renumber subsection E in new section 2. So it would read E2, and that would carve out, as used in the subsection, state property does not include a school building. So that would fall under prescribe, dispense, or administer medication or perform surgery as provided in section 3.
Okay, so a teacher can still talk to the kids. I mean, we're not saying, of course, teachers are going to talk to our children. I mean, they talk to them every day.
It would carve out a school building in that subsection. So.
But not just to talk to a child. I guess I'm just trying to.
Apologies.
Yeah.
No, ma'am. It would still read prescribe, dispense, or administer medication or perform surgery.
Okay, thank you very much.
Representative McDonald.
Perhaps the spirit of my attempt in this amendment was misunderstood with the reviser, so I might offer maybe a balloon amendment to address. My concern really is about the social transitioning portion, and when we mentioned earlier that even something as simple as using a preferred pronoun for a transgender child could put a teacher's license at risk. So I'm not sure, I certainly have never done a balloon amendment before, but would it be appropriate for me to try to add some usage with?
It would not be appropriate at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Bueller.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just, in the spirit of the continuing flow of amendments, and I do appreciate this, the tone of this is much better than it was a year ago, and I think the measured discussion is better. You know, when we talk about meeting in the middle, I think the meeting in the middle is 18 years old in my mind. The body, the human mind doesn't fully develop until the age of 26. I was struck by what I think it was Dr. Anderson said last night, and this is somewhat of a quote. In terms when we talk about pausing puberty, we have no clue what happens when we artificially pause puberty, no clue. So when we think about the population in total and what is going on, and it's not just, as we started out, the gender reassignment surgeries, it's the hormone therapies, it's the puberty blockers, it's the whole process. And it's the whole process for a kid whose mind isn't fully developed. I coached a kid in soccer when he was 4 years old, and he said he was a dragon. The next year, he wasn't a dragon. And I don't mean to make light of it, but it's an example of the process that every person goes through. It's that natural, physiological, biological, mental process of puberty and aging. And I think what we're saying is, take a pause. If you look at all of the European countries, and as I think Jamie said on Monday night, Australia reversed their position on these therapies. We know that the UK did it the very day that we were voting on this on the floor last year. And we know that the vast host of European nations have done that. So this isn't weaponization. And I know some would interpret it that this isn't weaponization. This truly is about protecting kids, and it's making sure that all children have the right to go through puberty as puberty was intended. And I think there's a statistic, some would say it's debunked, most others that I've read have not, that roughly 85 to 86% of all kids who have some degree of gender dysphoria resolve to their assigned sex at birth. So for that 86%, whether it's at a school or someplace else, to try to artificially get involved in that process, to me, seems to be cruel. And I hope that history doesn't look at this 20 or 30 years from now and think, what in the devil were you thinking? Because I do think, Degree, there is a contagion, a social contagion. You go back to the year before the year 2014, and you look at the numbers of statistics of people who were diagnosed with gender dysphoria before that year, and it drops off tremendously. So again, I appreciate the tone, I appreciate the measured discussion and all of that, but I do think the meat in the middle is 18. No one hates it. No one hates children. No one hates anybody in this position. It's about what's right for everybody. And in the spirit of this law, that's what we're talking about. So I may have rambled a little bit too much, Mr. Chair, but I appreciate the discretion. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Committee, further discussion. Representative Myers.
If I may respond to the representative, I really do appreciate what you just said and how much thought you've put into this. It means a great deal to me, as I know, I'm sure you understand, based on my previous remarks from the years prior. However, I would say to that, though, that is why I offered the 2 amendments that I did with the BSRB to make sure that we protect our children's mental health, and also that we respected the ability for those who may be affected by the liabilities of this bill to acknowledge a child's social transitioning. So that was very much a meet in the middle, I think, compromise for those of us who are very passionate about this subject, as you know, and trying to make sure that we give a little and we can get a little. But unfortunately, you know, we do have to keep running these amendments, as it's important to our constituency to let their voices be heard. And so I just wanted to say that I do also respect that. And I know that in years past, I have been one of the most heated individuals around this topic, but I do appreciate how much effort you all are putting into this, and that you are hearing us through this discussion. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Committee, further discussion. Representative McDonald, will you move your amendment, please?
I move my amendment.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion fails. Representative McDonald, Representative Orpezo, Representative Ruiz, Representative Myers, and Representative Weichel. Further amendments. Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one last amendment, if I could offer it, please. It's about,
Do I have a second?
okay,
A second by Ruiz.
thank you so much. This one's regarding actual state employees, not including school district employees. Thank you.
Would you care to explain your amendment, please?
Yes, please. And this one, I think we actually did get into the spirit of what I was trying to do a minute ago. Really, I'm concerned about this mention of social transitioning and the punitive nature when it comes to school district employees. I'm not satisfied that a teacher wouldn't be at risk of losing their license should they use the wrong pronoun according to the state.
Thank you very much for that. Committee discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, you may move your amendment.
I move my amendment.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion fails. Representative McDonald, Representative Orpezo, Representative Ruiz, Representative Myers, and Representative Weichel. Further amendments. Representative Ruiz.
Chair, I have an amendment.
Have a second. Representative Weichel seconds the amendment.
Thank you.
Would you care to explain your amendment, Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, I will. If you look at the fiscal note of this bill, most of that fiscal note talks about the setup of all these lawsuits that will happen as a result if this bill gets passed on the floor, obviously in both chambers. So in light of that, and the Supreme Court is already going to hear a bill very similar to this. So I'm asking that we have a sunset to this bill, and that the sunset be December 31st, 2027. With a sunset, it would give us the opportunity as a legislature to see what has transpired passing of this bill, and maybe, we change it, maybe we leave it alone. But I think we need to add a sunset to this bill. There's so many, you saw all the amendments that we had. These are all the questions that have been given to us since really day one, as soon as my constituents had learned that this bill had come through. So we're offering these amendments because I have constituents that were asking us to do this. There are going to be lawsuits. And so I just ask that we put a sunset to it.
Thank you for that. Committee discussion on the amendment. Representative McDonald.
I don't sit on Ag Committee, but last year I got to sit on Ag, and I was sitting over where Representative Rivas is, and I remember, I don't know anything about Ag, but a conversation came up about food pantries and how we could glean all of this food from the fields that was just going to rot, and we could give it to food pantries. And it was such a good bill. Everybody likes it. The farmers like it. The food pantries like it. Everybody likes it. And Representative Jacobs, who's a dear friend of mine, was sitting over here. And I remember he put a sunset on that bill. And I thought, why would you do that? Like, this is so good. This helps people. This is food for hungry people that would rot in a field. And it passed only with his sunset. And I was a pretty new legislator then, but I kind of started to realize over time, not every idea we have is a good idea. And I was not a favor of sunsets that day. And you may not be a favor of sunsets for this. But perhaps in 2 years or a year, whatever it was that Representative Jacobs dreamed up, maybe we'll have a better way then, and we will be forced to revisit it. And so, meeting in the middle would be really great. And I know that we're pretty outnumbered today with our thoughts, but it really would be a nice gesture if we could put a sunset on this. And I intend to be here in 2 years when the sunset comes up to have this conversation again. Thank you very much for your candor today and your consideration.
Thank you for that. Committee, further discussion? Seeing none, you may move your motion, Representative Reeves.
I close.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion fails. McDonald, Representative Orpeza, Ruiz, Representative Myers, and Representative Weichel. Further amendments? Seeing none. Committee, I want to thank you for the decorum. I assure you that there are bills that are not going to be as controversial in this committee and that we can all get together on. This one just happens to be. Yes. So I do thank everybody for their decorum, their politeness, and all that kind of stuff. So I would entertain a motion to approve the bill as amended. Representative Blex, do I have a second? Second by Representative Berquist. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
Bill passes. Representative McDonald, Representative Orpeza, Representative Ruiz, Representative Myers, and Representative Weichel are in opposition, and their votes are recorded. Committee, further business of the committee today. Seeing none, thank you for all your precipitation over the last couple of days. We are adjourned.